Okay, we're good.
We are?
Yep. Okay, so we're gonna start. So this is Field Day. This is gonna be posted on the podcast. This is Field Day podcast, 2024. We have Ben, Amrine, Johnny Ferentz, and Ryan Gibbs up here. Just wanted to have a conversation about farm management, life on the farm, and honestly see where it goes. And then probably take some questions from people for you guys and see where it goes. So who wants to start?
Cue Ben.
Ben, what do you got?
How come, Josh, every podcast starts like that?
I don't know.
Ben, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. It's hot.
It is.
Ryan?
You made me leave 75-degree Iowa weather for this.
Yeah,
so
I
it better
hate
be
you
good. No, it's been a really good event. I've learned a lot, met some new people. It's been really good. Things look good in Iowa. I come out here, things look good here. So, kind of impressed.
right here.
What's the number one takeaway from from the field day that you're going to take back home to the farm?
I'm going to tell everybody to lower their population on soybeans, which we've been doing that, I guess not we, but me. Like this year, I planted a lot of 100 to 110,000 population beans. I was always originally 140, then I backed down to 120, seeing really good results with 120. Last year, I backed down to 90 on some. We were in a D4 drought, 8 to 10 inches of rain last year in a 30-inch rainfall environment, and you couldn't tell a difference where I had 90,000 population. So this year, we did some 90,000 again, and I'm excited to see it. And after seeing yours at, mid-70s, I'm like, this is what we can do, And I think it's maybe a little bit to do with hybrid as well and management.
So here's a question, Johnny. The guys that are further north, do you think there is risk the further north you go, lowering population because of maturity shortening?
Well, I mean, even this year, we had a cool, wet spring. I had a producer. We usually hit around that 115 is what we're planting down there, and had a little bit of crusting issues. We had 80,000 come up. So then, of course, me doing what I do, just dived into university research, and I came up to an article from Purdue, and it was showing me that if you're at 80,000 population, you're still at the possibility of getting 98% of your yield. So I told him right then and there, we may have 80,000 stand, but if you replant, it's not because of a yield play. It's strictly because of a weed management play. So because we would have like sections of that field where you'd have a lower population of like 60, and then you'd go to the next area, it'd be 100. But yeah, so I don't think the risk is as high there. I think we can drop our populations, and we haven't seen it be a yield drag yet. I would say common practice around my area, you're looking at that 130, 140. We're slowly getting guys to 110 right now.
What do you think's, where would you, can you do 80, 60, 50? Where do you think you're like, no?
I like to plant 90 to at least get 75 up. Like that would be my lowest. And that means if we get 75 up out of the ground, I think we could still hit the same yield goal.
Gotcha. Okay. Does anybody have any soybean questions?
Justin.
Johnny, what was your takeaway from field day?
It was nice to get, what'd you say, 1 inch 20 rain and watch that. That was quite the event. No, what I really enjoyed was all the conversations. It was fun bringing the drone out, showing the possibilities with that drone. But then also, too, the honest truth. There's headaches that's going to come along the way in some ways that it kind of fits niches. I always love talking about soils. It can be a dry topic at times, but it is information I do think helps producers, and hopefully they take some of that information and they're able to find one or two things to hopefully implement this next year.
At what point do you think it fits in someone's operation to go ahead and purchase a drone?
So I'm a huge I love foliar feeding. I think there's a lot of truth to it for timing. I mean, if a person's farming, let's just say 500 acres and they plan on doing a couple foliar feeds, I mean, then you can find roughly 500 to 1,000 acres of custom work, and you could be able to, quote unquote, pay off that drone or at least be in positive ROI by year 2. So if you're willing to do a little custom work, that's an opportunity there. If you just want to do your own farm, I'm guessing you got to plan on that covering 1,500 acres a year somehow, some way, some form, if that's pasture spraying and or fungicide, insecticide, foliar feeding, so on and so forth.
Gotcha. Cool.
You know, I was thinking about that when we were out there, and those things are getting really popular in my area. I could list off 6 different people that have them, and they're doing some custom work, but they're also doing their own. And in our area, it seems like if you can find one that's a year old with like 1,000 acres on it, depreciated out pretty well, if you run 1,000 acres and you're bringing your child back to the operation, or you already have a hired man, you want to keep him a little bit more busier, you can justify that thing pretty easy on 1,000 acres or even 800 acres.
Yeah.
You know, and they're really common in our area. Most of them guys don't have insurance or licenses; they just run them, which is pretty illegal. But there's just, you know, but I mean, they work good. We don't have any issues. There's no wrecks. Guys are really smart about it.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think they definitely have their place.
Well, and if you go into that field, I mean, if you're farming that field, you know the hills and valleys, you know where power lines are. If you're doing custom work, spend the extra 5 minutes and make sure you know what you're flying at. Don't just go in there and go across. Next thing you know, a power line pops out of nowhere, and that's never a phone call anybody wants to make. So I do like the drones. I think they shine with pasture spraying, hitting those noxious weeds in certain areas, only spending money on chemical, not killing the beneficial forbs that are out there. It has a niche, and it fits that niche.
Cool. Any drone questions?
What would you say is too large of a farm, or where drones don't make sense at that point? We need to go to just airplane or going to like a regular.
Question is, where does a drone not make sense in large operations?
Yeah, well, I get to the point here, like, how many access points do you have? So if you're doing just your own acres, you can justify a drone if you're able to go across every corner of that field and just have a good starting point. Like I said, I've sent my drone half a mile away on it there back on a quarter, and I have no issue with that at all. With that being said, if it was really hilly ground, it's probably going to be a quarter mile. So it matters how many access points you can get to, or how much time you have on your hands. If you only have one access point, just know that you're probably going to spend an additional 45 minutes to an hour on that field just ferrying. And that's a time killer. Definitely if you're doing custom applications, I mean, an hour, that could be possibly another 80 acres you could have got done. Running 2 drones, of course, not running one. Running one, if you're at 40 acres an hour, you're doing pretty good. I think, I see some fields around my area, you know, you're looking at 300 acre fields, pretty darn flat. It's going to be relatively the same. It's more of where the farmer wants to support is what it gets to. Or if you have your operation and you have roads all the way around, then yeah, do it. You can purchase the drone, get your licenses, and
Or not.
I guess, according to Gibbs. But that's where I don't know if there's actually an acre number. It's more of accessibility of those acres, because if there's a road, let's just say it's a 500 acre field, but there is a road all the way around it, I could cover it. It wouldn't bother me one bit. But if there's only one spot right here and the end of that field's a mile away, I don't know if I could hit it. I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to hit it. So, yeah.
Clint.
Do you have to map every boundary, or can growers stick to their boundaries?
Yes.
Do you have to map boundaries is the question.
Yeah. So I do a lot of mine. I map my own, but can I take like John Deere Ops and take that information? Yes, I can. One thing I've seen though is a planter can go under a tree limb. A drone won't like that. So what I like to do with my maps that I create, I like to see where those tree lines are at. And I guess I always tell farmers I don't mess with trees, I don't mess with power lines. Like, this is my business. I don't need to go that far negative just to get that, 3 rows.
So can you use that map though to where maybe on like a waterway in the center and shut the flare off and then plant through it? Use that same map where you're going to shut off and see that and you across it.
Yeah, and also what I could do is on my aerial map, I can make a zone of non-spray. So it'll fly across, shut off.
Gotcha.
And that's on the T40s. The T30s don't have that capability. So.
Any soil questions? Yeah, so where I live in Nebraska, Toxicity, toxic levels in soil. What can we do to combat that?
Yeah, so I live at the beginning of the sandhills, as where cattle country meets corn country in Ord. And one of the issues we've seen is actually our sand. The parent material is higher than in aluminum. So when that pH drops from, let's just say you're dealing with like a low 5 pH in sand ground, that makes that parent material release that aluminum more. Well, one thing that's very unique is that aluminum toxicity looks very similar to nematode damage. So if you have a low CEC soil and you're pulling roots and people are saying it's nematodes and you've been putting a nemicide on it and it's still not solving the problem, send it in the test to see how available your aluminum is. Because if that's through the roof, that's your issue. Or if like on a wet year you never see a problem, then on a dry year the corn doesn't even last 3 days after a rain, you're probably dealing more with aluminum is how I see that. But it's always in our low CEC soils. Actually in dry land it's worse. And this field actually has both going on. So it has a nematode problem and it has aluminum toxicity. So I mean, every year we're spending $35 on a nemicide and hoping that it rains, because changing pH on dry land sand, a lot of people don't see the value in that.
Little tip. If you don't know if you got toxicity levels, especially in soybeans, roly-polies. If you got roly-polies, you got heavy metal. They're a detoxifier, and they thrive in that environment.
I'm from Iowa.
So-
What's a roly-poly?
What's a roly-poly?
So
It's like a cactus
say what
plant?
It's
say what
like
it
the little
isn't.
kid's replaceable soccer ball.
It's
Have you ever seen one?
No.
They're
That's why I'm
crustacean.
asking.
That's why I'm
They're like a
asking.
beetle, and once you touch them, their defenses roll into a ball.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if it was a weed or a bug. Or
no, it actually say what it is. Most people don't actually know what it is. That it is a crustacean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's why insecticides are so ineffective, right?
you can make chitin out of them. They're hard shell bug.
Yeah. There was talk that might work.
Anyway, yes.
Brad thought peppermint oil would drive them out, but it seems like toxicity levels, that's what they're thriving in. We talked about it, never did it. If you apply dry humate, and it's a detoxifier as well, if it would actually make it undesirable for them. But we never got that far in testing yet.
But yeah, not yet.
Yep.
Anyway, can you talk a little bit about salts? Some people deal with salts, some people don't deal with salts. In salty soils, I mean, can you talk about your operation a little bit and how you're combating that? Because you don't have necessarily salty water, but you're doing manure applications, et cetera. And I know there's guys here with salty water. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Like how I'm dealing with salts.
Yeah.
So salts, Shane over here, he deals with salts. I've got a couple guys in Texas I work with, and then all the Sedgwick guys are dealing with salts. Humic is my go-to for salt, particularly in the root zone, liquid humic, surface treat. If you're irrigating, it's coming through the water. Surface treat dry is about the only way to combat. You're going to have to cover the entire field and then capture it before it gets into the profile. Salt's tendency is to turn the surface into rock. That's what it just kind of starts binding a calcium in, and it just becomes rock. So if you can break that up, keep that from happening, you're going to have better infiltration. That's almost beside the fact mummifying the root and causing root burn, all these other issues that come around salt. That is more for me on the liquid side in furrows, and a lot of times I ditch everything but humic and double or triple the rates trying to deal with it. But that's my limiting factor. So it's not nutritional on that side, it's salt all the time. So we'll take that and use humic instead. So that's a lot of it. The other thing is keeping it off the plant. So you come back east or up north when you're dealing with topography, pivots and things trying to climb terrain, it becomes a bigger issue with dealing with nozzle packages being too low or whatever. For us, we're flat, so we put everything on the ground. Keep it off the plant, and that allows us to essentially buff off some of that.
You drop your nozzles as low as possible.
Yeah.
Got it.
I got fields that are so flat, the nozzle height is set off of how far the tires sink into the ground through the air. That's the determining factor where we put them.
That is boring farming. You don't roll chopper boxes and stuff?
No.
You ain't farming.
Yeah.
You don't roll a chopper box every year. You're not farming.
Can you talk? That makes me think of a point of guys using irrigation. Can water on a plant in a very severe, like drought, hot sun, can water on a plant cause magnification, cause harm to the plant? Is there any reason that that's why you're dropping the drops down? Can you talk a little bit more about that side of irrigation?
Caustic water, things in water, particularly ditch water, irrigation water coming out of rivers, mountain ranges, reservoirs. You deal with other toxic things. Ark River, not over here as much, but in the Colorado line is uranium. It's got a fair amount of uranium in it. Chlorides, calcium levels are high, sometimes iron. It just depends on what you're dealing with. Try to avoid those if all possible. Obviously, if you're irrigating with it. Shane has no option. That's all he's got. So my suggestions, he set up a new machine. I told him to use a certain package and keep it off the plant as much as possible, especially if you're dealing with, calcium or salt chloride. It's going to cause a lot of harm to the stoma and everything else. It's going to throw things out. So keeping it off is key for me in that. Drip irrigation, I don't know, we don't really deal with drip. Carmichael hates it, and I kind of agree with him on that. So, but it is a factor for sure. Even foliar feeding like copper and things like that, you can screw it up, and even in small trace amounts. So there's no reason to say that irrigation water won't do the exact same thing.
Gotcha. Any irrigation questions or soil questions? Water question.
So chlorinated water, using that city water to spray post-application on soybeans and corn, not good for plant microbial life. How can we get our chlorinated water to be beneficial without those treatments or products we would use on the end?
So chlorinated municipality water used for foliar feed, post-applications, etc., so that we're not getting chlorine and water treatment products into the plants and soil, etc. How do we combat that? Because I know there's products out there to treat. Mm-hmm. Different companies offer different treatments, but
if it's just chlorinated, it'll gas off. If you've got a storage tank to put it, it'll gas off. Chlorinated water will.
an open tank.
Has to be open. Yeah. I want to say, don't quote me on this, 24, 36 hours that it has to sit,
That, 24.
and then it'll gas off. The chlorination will.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
Johnny, what does chlorinated water do to microbial life?
Well, I guess I always get into the part of, why do they add chlorine to swimming pools and all that jazz?
Yeah.
To take control of stuff growing into it. With that being said, there's a lot of things that affect biology throughout the season, okay? So I always get to the part of just as long as we know what we're doing and we counteract if we're doing a negative. So if we're doing a negative, make sure we're doing a positive. Make sure that we're feeding carbon sources, feeding humics, feeding fulvics to that plant to make sure we're moving that area. Like you said, there's products that you can buy to help with that. I think it's an idea of if we don't have that product and we're still applying with it, understanding how can we make sure that we're counteracting that the best way possible. And if that's through a foliar feed, if that's like with us, we'll just send it through the pivot right after. Like one thing I've done is after they've done a post spray, we'll go do a fertility right after it so it can metabolize that quicker. So when we do a negative, we try to match it with a positive every time.
Would you say that chloride isn't the direction to watch as much as pH?
Yes, I care more about pH in that situation. I mean, chloride should bind pretty quick if you have the right concoction. But pH, I really want to look into that. I mean, if your pH is really high in that situation, I mean, there's a chance herbicides losing effectivity. Then if you're doing any fertility, you might as well have just kept it out of the tank, kind of deal.
So Pat sent me an interesting tidbit. 1 teaspoon of liquid humic, liquid form of humate, can neutralize chloramines in 100 gallons of water, depending on the exact concentration. So, I mean, can we take that one step further, that Fulvic might do that, might bind that? What are your thoughts, Ben?
I don't see why it wouldn't. The other thing is, I mean, you were the one last year that put glyphosate in with humic, right?
I did not. I had a neighbor that tried it.
Okay. And it neutralized the gly.
So he mixed it up, went and sprayed some stuff with it. That stuff did die.
Uh-huh.
The next day he went back, tried spraying some stuff with it, and it didn't work.
Yeah. And it neutralized it.
Neutralized it.
Yeah.
Neutralized the chemical.
The other thing is the active biology's effect on glyphosate itself. And so this is something Haney's were talking about when we were all up in Iowa. Were you part of that, Gibbs, when we were talking about glyphosate?
I think so.
Putting glyphosate in a tank with Johnson Sioux and then testing in 24 hours, there is no gly left in that tank. It ate it. It was gone. And so I've talked to several guys here about that over the years. Is glyphosate damaging biology? If anything, it's almost like it's candy or something. But the point is humic is full of biology. If you're introducing it into a water treatment, although you're talking chloride, so we're not talking about the same thing, so never mind.
Nature has a way of fixing itself. I mean,
Yeah.
if you throw some stuff out there that kills off some biology or some stuff,
And I'm
it'll
not so
eventually heal,
concerned
you know.
about chlorine in the water. My more concerned is fluoride.
Really?
It won't gas off. You're
Okay.
kind of just stuck with it.
Yeah, bigger molecule.
Yep.
Okay. Any other dirt questions? Or just questions? I don't care.
Is
Can I have
anybody
your
else
topics?
using sodium molybdate?
No.
No? Am I the only one?
No, I'm just answering for me. I don't know if they are.
Is anybody else using sodium molybdate? Molly? Molybdum? I think I've seen some really good responses with it so far on my farm this year. And we're putting an ounce per acre down. So it's a very small amount. You buy it in a 5-pound bag that does 80 acres. So it's kind of nice mixing batches up. And I just mixed it up in a 2.5-gallon jug, shake it up good, dump it right in top of my tender trailer with my nitrogen, thiosulfate, humic, molasses, solubor mix. And I think there might be a few other things in there. It was a whole sticky note full of stuff that I mixed. But the sodium molybdate works in nitrogen conversion.
Yep.
And also with soybeans, it helps to produce nitrogen and convert it. I don't know the exact terms for it. I was reading on it before I applied it. But it's really low rates, and it actually showed up on my tissue tests when I took it. Last year, it wouldn't even show up in my tissue test, but I wasn't applying it, and I was seeing deficiencies in it. This year, I put an ounce per acre with corn, half an ounce with soybeans, and showed up my tissue test.
Nice.
With that being said, adding too much is toxic for forage production and silage for livestock.
Yes.
But moly, sodium molybdate, works directly with copper. So if your copper levels are extremely deficient and you throw a whole bunch of moly out there, it will show up toxic in the seed and in the forage for cattle. So there's a relation there. Some people think an ounce per acre isn't enough, and it showed up in my tissue test at an ounce per acre, like it was there. and the plants look really good. And this year's the lowest amount of nitrogen we've ever put on our farms, on our corn.
This is a great segue into nitrogen. Gibbs, where are you at on nitrogen?
Lowest is 140 pounds of nitrogen, and that's giving the beans a 40-pound credit. So 100 pounds of applied. And then my highest is 220, and that's giving my manure 100% credit. My liquid
It's
hog
all manure.
No. The manure is 99 pounds of it
Okay,
with 100 and some pounds of liquid applied.
got it.
UAN. Split
Side-
applied.
Side dress?
Yes.
Got it.
Hog manure was applied in the fall. We ran liquid humic with the hog manure, 1 gallon per 10,000 gallons, knifed in. And then we came back in the spring. This was all no-tilled into cover crop. It was only about 10 to 12 inch tall cover crop. We terminated right before we planted. No-till planted into some, strip-tilled into the other. 30 pounds with the planter, and then we came back and side dressed variable rate depending on the field. We pull soil test at V5 to see how much we need to apply. So like the previous year we were in a drought, we pulled soil test at V5. We had 150 pounds of available N at V5 in the soil at 6 inches deep. We didn't side dress last year, and there was no rain in the forecast. So it's like, well, if we do side dress, how is it even going to wash in? And we got 150 pounds there. Why would we even put any out at this point?
Sure.
You know, this year we end up coming back side dress. When I side dress, we throw the book at it. Nitrogen, thiazole sulfate, humic, molasses, manganese sulfate, zinc sulfate, solubor, yucca. I think I threw some kelp in there. It was a big sticky note because I got a bigger. I actually went and I had told my wife I need some sticky notes. She got me the big ones, not them little square ones, but the big ones, and I filled that whole, like every line up on it. And it started with a bucket test to make sure this would all work. A couple days later, it all stayed in solution. We got really good well water, high pH, but it's really good water. And it all stayed in suspension. So yeah, we mixed it up and we side dressed that with the sprayer with just a Y drop. This year we were really dry, really wet. We're over 30 inches on most of our fields. Some of them are in the mid 20s, but most of them are around 30 or over 30 inches of rainfall. I am starting to see pockets that are turning yellow though on my sand. So I probably should have put more down.
Is that nitrogen? Or is that too much water and potassium issues?
I wouldn't say it's too much potassium. It's on some of
Or
my rented
oxygen.
ground. That's, sandy. It's basically on my sand knobs. But my sand knobs that I put dry humate on are the best they've ever looked, ever. I can't believe it. So, but we did let the cover crop grow a little longer. Terminated it, batwing mowed it. It looked like we planted into a golf course. It was like mowed down, so there's all this mowed cereal rye with black strips in it. It just looks so cool. It looked really nice.
Guys, we just wanted to stop for just a second and let you know that we're looking to expand our team, building our group of distributors across the United States. If you are passionate about soil, helping people, farming,
Learning.
yeah, absolutely. You can reach out.
Info at singularags.com. Agros.
Singular Agros.
Agros, correct.
Info at singularaagros.com.
Yeah.
Anyway, so will there be a link in the description? You can do that.
Yeah.
Techie. Catch you guys
Well, he's a
later.
knowledge guy.
Yeah.
Catch you later.
So last year I was able to get away with 0.5 to 0.7 pounds of N per bushel. That's kind of my goal that I like to run is 0.7 pounds per bushel.
Yep.
We had fields that were 130 bushel last year. We hit spots that were 270 on 8 inches of rainfall. So last year was not a good year for us. Most of my fields have a yield goal. Sandy ground, if I can hit 200 on sand, I'm pretty happy. My good ground, if it's not pushing 240 to 260, we're scratching our heads wondering what did we do wrong. So that's kind of where we're at, Northeast Iowa.
What's your best corn look like right now?
It looks green.
Good.
I mean, when I go out,
What's your extremely optimistic self saying we might hit this?
Oh, I think we'll hit 300 in patches. We've done that already before. I mean, we know it's there. It's not something that just stays all the way across the field 300. You know, it'll run 260, 270. You'll hit 300 for about 40 foot. And then we always got them good pockets. You know, everybody's got good pockets in their field. And everybody's got them sand knobs that show up every year, you know. But if we can run an average on my best field, if we can run an average of 240 to 250, I'd be happy with pockets that are going to have 300. You got to realize the deer eat the first 12 row, the beaver eat that back corner, and the coon destroy about an acre and a half. So that's, you know, if that 90-acre field will average 240 after all that stuff. And we've done it before. I've got the yield maps. We've done it before. It's fun. The grain cart can't keep up, but it's fun. And it's there. I know we can do it. This year we got the moisture. I really like my program. I don't know. I went and counted ears and stuff, and I've counted ears, and it's like, oh, we got 340 bushel potential here, and it's like 240, you know?
Yeah.
And then I've counted other fields, and I'm like, this field is not very good. And we're running across it, and it's like phenomenal.
Yep.
So when I go and count ears and do stand counts, they're never right. Never. They're not even close. It's not even worth doing. It's just like, oh, yep, looks good. I'm just going to leave it at that and not get my hopes up.
Well, I even have a grower every week. I always have to hold myself back from what I seen in the field because I know what I just counted. There's no way that's going to be the number at the end of harvest. So I always have to catch myself, and me and him always laugh because I was like, I had to talk myself from calling you because I was going to tell you what I counted and what the possibility was. And yeah, it's just a laughing joke that we have that you never get that number that you count here during August. So
What month is it, Josh?
It's a month of promise right now. It's a month of August.
Yep.
September is a month of reality.
Yeah, we still need a few more inches to fill grain, you know. We were really wet this spring. Our roots are shallow.
Yeah. How much? Okay, so, I mean, walked the plot this morning in Strong City. So our milk line, I mean, it was dropping pretty rapidly. It was hot. We weren't getting rain for a little while, and so that corn was going ahead and finishing up. And then it started raining, and it got cool. And I'm not kidding, man. That milk line has stopped. Like, it stopped. And I'd say we're 2/3 of the way down on the milk line, and it's just sitting there. Talk about, the potential that can be added at the end, but right before black layer. What's the swing there? What's the plant doing? What is it capable of? I mean, obviously we're not doing more rounds, more long, more counts long. We're talking about kernel quality and density. Can we talk a little bit about grain quality in that stage?
well, I get to the part of I always say, what are we dividing by? We know the calculations, how many ears per acre times the row around times the length, and then dividing it by how many kernels per bushel. I mean, I could take an ear that's 16 by 40, and if I divide it by 60,000, that's 300 bushel corn. If you take it divided by 90, okay, that's I think it's
175.
yeah, 175 or 200.
Yeah.
So like this time of year, I tell our growers in pivot country, we got to still manage here. We got to have the moisture. We got to be smart with moisture management. But then also, if we have nutritional ones, the juice might be worth the squeeze here because of how much more kernel depth we're going to get. So yeah, I don't throw the hat in until black layer. Definitely with pivot country where I'm at, we just got to keep pushing. Because if we're able to divide by 70, farmers are going to be smiling. If we're dividing by 90, they're going to say what happened.
Sure.
The amount of swell that you can increase in kernel depth is one thing, but just even the swell, I think most of this maybe not, but you'll get a kernel that'll kind of have a cap and your moisture layer come down and you got good conditions, and then the bottom gets fat. And so you get like a bobber kernel. And I've seen grain look like it's going to burn up or whatever. It's racing to the end, get cool like you mentioned, and then still pack in, go into the low 70s. Mm-hmm. Now, that's what we're talking at field day, or not at field day, at the plot this morning. It's test weight. You get more test weight. I hate that term.
I know.
I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
But test weight, I've talked 70,000 per bushel, not 70 pounds in a stupid machine at the elevator, I don't give a rip what that machine says. So everybody asks about that, and it's irrelevant. You pluck one kernel out, it'll make 2 pounds difference in that cup. So I don't really care what that part is. But the swell components of it, and then also people freak out on the 16 around, 14 around, 12 around, or get real stoked on a 22. Them, where they're not packed in there as tight, that late season swell gets better. And so there's more room. It's like packing teeth, and it's only going to get so tight.
Well, I mean, we saw a 22 round on your place. We were down there 2 weeks ago.
There's one sitting out there.
There's one sitting out there. He brought it. Anyway, 22 around, and then you pull and you'll find a 16 around. That is I mean, you just hold it back up, and you get back to where you can't quite tell how many's on there. They're both equal size. You know, you just got a ton of much smaller kernels, and then you have, you know, fewer kernels, but twice the size, you know. So
it's not a lateral line for sure. You don't 16 or 22. It's not test weight to test weight. You're talking 16s are going to be in the 60s at times, or even possibly upper 50s, and 22s are going to be 80 or potentially more. So it's not the same thing. They don't move parallel, and so people get into the 16s and 14s and, oh crap, I quit, I give up, it's terrible corn, like you were mentioning. You see a field and you don't think it's going to be good based off counts, and in the end it's test weight.
Well, yeah, you go onto your phone and you're like, I'm going to put in this yield estimate calculator, so you count everything and then you divide the rows, put all that in, you're like, oh yeah, you know, it's going to be good. Grab a Coors Light, the side by side, you head home all happy. And a month later you're in the combine having a Coors Light and you're crying because your phone said it was going to go 260 and it's only going, you know, 190. And you're like, man, I shouldn't have ordered that Denali. You know? I don't drive a Denali, by the way. So, but yeah, like you said, the month of hope and promise, and yeah. So I don't even do that anymore. I went out and looked at fields. I've got fields that got 14 round and the ears are huge. I've got fields that are 18 rounds and the ears look the same size, and I'm looking at them, you know, in my head I'm thinking this 14 round field, this corn looks phenomenal, like this should be really good yield corn, but it's only 14 round. But the ears are huge. They're the same size as the ears in the field 2 miles down the road that are 18 rounds. It's a different hybrid, but and that field looks good too, and I'm like, well, this one should be 60 bushel better than this one. We won't know till we combine.
here's a question. A couple guys have asked me recently. So they'll go to count an ear, and this is on every ear. They'll go to count an ear, and the base is 18 round or 20 round, and you go part way up, and it drops to, like, if it's 20, it drops to 18. If it's 18, drops 16, 16 down to 14. What caused that?
A lot of times, so there's a stress event that occurred some way, shape, or form. I have seen in my area the correlation between when they post-sprayed, and that post-spraying would have been about the same time that ear was getting developed, and you just hit that window and it shrunk. I mean, one thing
This tall corn?
No, I'm talking like you're hitting the edge of when you shouldn't be post-spraying anymore on corn.
Which is?
Like V5, V6-ish. You know, if you're hitting it
when
there with
most
the
of
growth
us are doing
regulator.
a post.
I mean, when you're hitting that with a growth regulator, the plant, I mean, that's a hormone deal.
Okay.
I mean, it's a hormone herbicide that's trying to kill it. So, yeah, the corn's surviving it, but they still have to process it, and it's not going to be just nothing's going to happen to the corn. I mean, it still has to process that chemical, still has to go through
The metabolization.
metabolization of it. So
would you say in a perfect world, get residual on right after planting and not have to come back with a post? I mean, I know that's what Ben goes for all the time.
Yeah, you want to go for that, but how realistic is it that that's going to happen?
How realistic, or how much can you tolerate?
Amen. Okay.
How
I
many,
agree.
how many
'Cause I
weeds are
agree.
you okay with?
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen.
I have a scout, and he'll walk, and he said if he can walk more than 5 steps and not hit another weed, he's fine. Most people, that's too thick.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on what the weed is and what we're dealing with in a crop for me, but I'm fine with weeds to an extent. Post-spray for me, post spray is a rescue. It don't even frickin' work most of the time. And even this year's been clear proof. I'm post spray and it did more damage to the damn crop than it did the stupid weed. Yeah. And then it slowed everything down, and now we still got the same deal, and I got a bill in the end. And so I've kind of moved away from post. As long as it isn't yield robbing, you're just creating more resistance in whatever weed, and you're getting a bill too.
Yeah. And this is in a generally very dry, environment. Which weeds are harder to kill in that environment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everybody's fighting resistance.
Everyone's fighting, yeah.
Especially in the
absolutely.
pigweed palmer family.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
incredible how fast they adapt.
Yeah, Vance McCoy yesterday, he was looking at this, and so pigweeds don't thrive in high humus areas. He told me, he said, you should get some pigweed seeds this fall and put it in a bucket of humic and see what it does. And his theory was it will probably sprout, but I'll bet it's going to have a really crappy life in that bucket and won't thrive.
Yep.
Be interesting to see. I'm going to try it.
Well, yeah.
Joe's got a spot where they had a spreader screw up, and it dumped a bunch of humic in a strip, and it's clean ground and pigweeds on either side. So, I'm not saying that's going to, but we're starting to link these things together. What does this weed, because we see it. I mean, on the upland ground, I don't fight pigweeds, I fight bindweed. Down the bottoms, I don't fight bindweed, I fight pigweeds, and so on and so forth. So obviously something in soils, I know the weed seed's there, I see it around, but they certainly don't thrive, and I don't fight it like I do in other places. So nutrients and soil types directly obviously correlates to weed problems.
Ben,
Yeah.
would you agree or disagree with this statement? After V6, if there's a weed every 5 steps, there's going to be no yield gain by removing any weeds that are out there, as long as it's not suffocating the plant.
I'd agree.
That's one thing I think about is if we can keep that field clean from when we put it in the ground to at least V6. So when that crop is growing, generating its root system, it says, I'm the primary here. I'm the big dog swinging. Then if stuff happens later on or stuff's starting to pop up, like I understand, trying to take care of weeds for the seed bank. But then I get to where crop prices are right now, and is the juice worth the squeeze? Are we even going to kill the darn things? Are we building a higher resistant level? I mean, there's so many other factors to it than just saying, oh, we got to solve it. We got to solve it, So just things I ponder late at night. So
Well, so this is something I brought an Ohio guy out to western Kansas, and he was talking about spraying weeds, controlling weeds. And I know that Iowa, especially this year that you talked about it, the wind. You can keep everything out, but if the dirt's blowing and it's full of weed seeds, it's blowing that crap right in your field too. So at what point are you really winning anything?
Yeah.
So I've seen guys.
Pride comes at a cost.
It does. And in western Kansas, you don't see them back here as much, but in western Kansas,
Lean
anybody
up.
from western out here,
Lean up. Thank you.
anybody from western Kansas, if somebody's keeping the field clean in June, kochia is highly resistant to most things except paraquat. There will be lines through the field where every kochia rolled across. And so you're just sharing with your buddy. And if your buddy across the road never sprays, then he just essentially seeded you too. So it is a pride thing. I used to be that way. Like, there's a few scattered weeds out there, I'm going to go pay somebody to rogue it because I don't want to see a weed. But after a while, it kind of give up because economics, what are you doing it for? Just to look cool or make money?
$50 post spray or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, cool. Any last thoughts? We're going to get this wrapped up.
Any last thoughts?
Last thoughts.
Ryan, what are you going to do next year to make money?
That's what this loss is shifting to. Instead of yield, it's
I seen.
I need to make some more.
Yes.
I need to make money next year. Not that we didn't before, but boy, with $3 corn and 9% interest, it's sure a hot topic.
I seen yesterday on Successful Farming on their website, they had a printout of projected farm incomes of negative $200 an acre on corn next year. So
And people are going to plant it anyway.
it's not even that you're planting it. It's that you're planting it with that as a goal.
Yeah. That a
Yeah.
loss is the plan.
Yeah. And a hope that the prices will come up. So what are you going to do to ensure that that's not your outcome?
Well, you run the numbers this winter. I mean, I'm running pretty much all liquid products. We don't run any anhydrous. I'm going to run liquid potash next year with Y-drop. I'm planning on, which I was planning on doing this year, but I'm going to do more focus on it, melting urea. I'm going to buy a 3,000 gallon cone bottom tank, put the hoses up to it so it swirls, and I'm going to liquefy my urea and run that instead of 28 or 32% because I want more efficiency. So if I can maybe run the same amount of nitrogen I was running this year, but be more efficient with it, do our split applications, whatnot. I'm going to put more humic on my bad ground and less humic on the ground that doesn't need it. I kind of did that last year, and we're seeing really good results from that. Our higher fertility, better dirt, we're still running some, but not much. And then our really bad ground, we really hit it hard, and that really looks good.
When you
the bad
say
ground
hard,
was
how much?
Like 200.
Okay.
200 pounds, 50 pounds on the better quality dirt. Calcium is probably the number one thing on the top of my list. And the reason being is our base saturation's 60% calcium, and our mag is really high. So I don't know if we're going to go gypsum this year. Last year we ran Bio-cal, and this spring, that top inch or two, when you planted it, the row closed perfect. And I'm talking base saturation magnesium like 25%. We've got tight soil.
Yeah.
Well, we put ag lime on every 6 years for 30 years, you know, because that's what we were told to do.
Yeah.
5 years ago, we started learning about this stuff. We need to make some changes. So we were running pelletized gypsum at a couple 100 pounds per acre in the spring. This last year, we did Bio-cal at 750 pounds. That's got 22% calcium, 7% sulfur, 0.5% boron. And I really like that product. It was bigger particles, but also really fine stuff. So some of it was really available, and some of it was real slow breakdown. And when we planted, I've never had planting conditions this nice. No tilt into 25% base saturation. Like the furrow closed. The stand was even. Our biggest problem we were fighting in our no-till was that perfect, you know, everyone wants that picture perfect. They all come up at the same time. And we could not get that. And it wasn't closing. We weren't getting the planting conditions we want. This spring we had that. And I give credit, and I do custom planting as well. I could go up a couple miles up the road to similar soil that did not have calcium on it. And you couldn't get the furrow closed very well at all. I mean, you could tell. I could get out and tell right away. And just, the calcium's a big thing for me on my farm that we've seen an increase on.
So how much before did you apply that product?
We applied it in the fall.
In the fall. So
Yes.
it had
Yep.
time to work in.
Yep.
Okay.
And I would tell guys, this is just my personal opinion, if you're going to apply a calcium product, put it down in the fall, depending on what the calcium product is. If it's like calcium nitrate, you want to run that with your nitrogen, or put that in the spring, obviously. There's a couple other products of calcium I'm looking that you could put down with the planter, but pelletized gypsum, we kind of got burned on that 2 years ago because we put it down in the spring and it never rained. That was the year we had the drought.
Okay.
You go out there a month later, you could find the pelletized gypsum sitting on top of the soil because we had like an inch of rain in a month and a half. So come the time we needed the calcium for the plant to uptake it, it wasn't even there.
Yeah.
You know, and so now it's like if we're going to put calcium down, we're putting it down in the fall, and it allows that soil to just soften up in the spring. And our planting conditions this spring were the best they've ever been in the no-till system with cover crop. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
That's awesome.
I'm not going to let the throttle off. It seems like if you, this is just my opinion in eastern Iowa, if you let the throttle off your fertility and your biological and your whole program, you lose more money. Like I'd rather
I ripped
grow,
my throttle off and threw it in the dumpster.
I'm gonna grow my way out of it. I'm gonna push for more yield.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to be more productive, and with my money, obviously you're gonna stick the money where it needs to be. We're
Yeah.
banding everything.
Just
we're
getting
side
much
dressing
more
everything.
specific with application.
Getting more specific with application, but we're not gonna let off the throttle much.
Yep.
Here's my take on that. So my deal, my area, anhydrous is cheap, just kind of like back here. Anhydrous is cheap. Liquid, at least a third higher most of the time. The idea that I take is that I'm going to be precision. That's exactly what Ryan's talking about. He's using products not that's the cheapest, but he can actually be precise. If I'm going to plant seed, I'm not going to buy the cheapest seed. I'm going to buy the seed that meets it perfectly and put it in there the way I want it to go, and then feed everything when I want it to go there, not with the cheapest crap I can find. That's completely the way you'll hang yourself. Anhydrous up front, blah, 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 and I'm just going to pound the cheap things in there and go on. 90%, that's how you get broke pretty quick. So for me, I put liquid on. I'm using in-furrows. Everything's going through pivots. I know exactly when I want that corn plant to grow, or milo for the most part. We're not doing beans as much anymore. I put it on in, and then we just be real precise. So per unit, I'm spending more, but I don't hardly use any units. And then we're getting the same yield. So sometimes precision, which is over talked about in the industry, but precision as far as application and timing, 100% timing, it seems to be everything. You know, you talked your 0.7 to 0.5.
0.5 to 0.7. It depends on the field, depends on the farm.
With irrigation, I'm 0.3 to 0.6 as on all my nitrogen. So in other things is even, far below average as well. So, and I'm not using cheap product, and I'm not using cheap hybrids.
Well, it's the importance of knowing quality. Knowing quality, trusting who you're working with. Try to work with someone that's got experience. And if someone's pushing you towards more, they're probably not trying to live on 350 corn. So, that's kind of the deal. I was chasing yield, and it just kept biting me. Last year, the harder I chased it, the worse it bit me, because Mother Nature was my yield limiting factor. The field I tried the hardest on was my lowest yielding field. Why? It just didn't rain. No application was going to save the crop, and that's fine. And that's something I talked to Stroberg about, several times this year. There are guys not far away from here that, this whole crop here has been a battle for multiple years in a row. It won't rain, and it's a matter of, and Ben, you've talked about it too, knowing when to pull the plug is equally, maybe more useful as knowing when to apply, when not to apply, because as the value of the commodity comes down, gosh dang, and you've got risk in there, it's hard to let a crop grow or go. But same, if there's no rain in the forecast and it's 110 degrees and 40 mile an hour winds and you're at tassel, do you pull the plug? Do you not? And that's a tough spot to be in, but it's a tough spot that there's a lot of people in this room are in that spot, have been in that spot for a long time.
I don't know, yield goal is another one we talk about a lot. And hitting a target, and what do you need to hit that target? That's the biggest thing. So say you got a balloon here on the floor, and that's your target. Well, the industry carpet bombs this entire area to hit that balloon. So people start talking precision. Okay, well then they bring in a JDAM to hit a balloon. Yeah, they hit it right on the dot, but they hit it with a huge bomb. What if you can just drop a dart, and that dart costs next to nothing? That's the idea of precision. True precision, you don't have to have exactly best of the best, but you got to hit it. And if you're going to use something small, you got to hit it. So when you start cutting in like I do, precision time, I'm 2-day window. Like I get it down that tight, and then we do it all. And I've got pump almost on every pivot anymore, and we load them up, and I run everybody real hard, and then we hit it right there. So, and the more and more we pinch, the more precision it's got to get on time. So.
Cool. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys. We did a podcast earlier in the year what are we looking forward to in 25? Now we're all run ragged, exhausted. And
24.
24.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exhibit A. I don't even know what year it is. But anyway, appreciate you guys. I learned a lot. I know everybody here learned an awful lot. Everyone's input. It's a team effort, and it's a lot more fun with a team than it is trying to do stuff by yourself. So, yeah. Cool. We appreciate you guys.
I was waiting for the farm on, Jim. We need
Yeah. And Gibbs, what do we say?
Well, to all the farmers out there, thank you guys for all your hard work.
Oh.
Everybody knows that we bust our tails off, and everybody listening as well. So keep farming on.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you guys. See you later.